In everybody's life, there's a special person. This is a song about that special person in my life.
10 songs, 6 decades. One woman who rewrote the rules of what country music was allowed to say, who was allowed to say it, and how much power the person saying it was allowed to have. These are the 10 Dolly Parton songs that the industry doubted, dismissed, and in some cases actively tried to bury. And every single one of them changed country music forever. Number 10. Dumb Blonde, 1967. A 21-year-old girl from the Smoky Mountains walked into a recording studio in 1967. She had a platinum wig, a rhinestone jacket, and a look that made the men in the room assume they knew exactly what she was. They were wrong. The song she'd come to record was called Dumb Blonde. And from the first line, it announced something Nashville wasn't ready for.
Don't try to cry your way.
Country music in 1967 had very specific ideas about women. They could be heartbroken wives. They could be devoted sweethearts. They could suffer beautifully or love unconditionally. What they were not supposed to do was fight back. Dumb Blonde did exactly that. The lyrics weren't sad. They weren't pleading. They were something far more dangerous for that era. They were funny, sharp-tongued, self-aware. A woman looked her dismissive partner dead in the eye and said, "You've mistaken me for someone who accepts this."
Oh, well, somehow I lived through it, and you know if
The question inside every boardroom, would country radio play it? The answer surprised everyone. The song reached the top 25 on the Billboard country charts. For a debut single from an unknown girl barely old enough to rent a car, that was extraordinary. But the industry learned the wrong lesson. They filed her away as a novelty, a pretty face with a punchline. They had no idea she was just warming up.
don't try to lie, or I'll catch you.
Dumb Blonde didn't just chart. It quietly drew a line in the sand. On one side, every female country artist who'd come before her. On the other, something country music had never seen and couldn't quite name yet. The song that came next, though, that one they definitely weren't ready for.
Oh, when you left, you thought I'd sit and you thought I'd wait.
Number 9. Coat of Many Colors, 1971.
Through the years, I go wondering once again.
Here's something most people don't know about one of country music's most sacred songs. When Dolly Parton wrote Coat of Many Colors, she cried. And when the label heard it, they weren't sure what to do with it. The song was autobiographical, and that was the problem. It described a childhood so poor that her mother sewed her a coat from rags. It described classmates who laughed at her for wearing it. It described a child who didn't understand why they were laughing. Because to her, that coat was priceless.
The rags that someone gave us, and how much.
Radio programmers liked stories about heartbreak between adults, not poverty and childhood humiliation. So why would anyone play it? The answer turned out to be the one thing no one anticipated. It was true. Not true in a vague, emotional sense. True in the way that makes your chest tighten, because somewhere in you recognizes it. Millions of listeners, many of them people who'd grown up with very little, heard that song and felt, perhaps for the first time, that country music was actually talking about their lives.
For me, made only from rags, but I wore.
It reached number 4 on the country charts. That was the easy part. What happened over the next 5 decades is what made it extraordinary. Coat of Many Colors became a song that parents played for children, that grown adults put on at funerals, that showed up in conversations about faith, about poverty, about what it means to love someone through impossible circumstances.
Although we had no money, I was.
Dolly Parton herself has said it's the song she's most proud of. But here's what you have to understand. In 1971, vulnerability like that was considered a liability. She turned it into an heirloom. And if you think that story is something, Wait until you hear about the song that nearly destroyed a relationship so important that losing it would have ended her career entirely.
In my coat of many colors, Mama made.
Number 8. Jolene, 1973. Picture this. It is 1973. Dolly Parton is sitting at a piano, somewhere between terror and desperation, writing a song to a woman she's never met.
Jolene, 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 Jolene.
A woman she's afraid is going to take everything from her. The story behind Jolene has been told many times, but the version that gets glossed over is the one with real stakes. There was a real woman, a red-haired bank teller who had developed a genuine attachment into Dolly's husband, Carl Dean. Dolly has said in interviews she wasn't entirely sure where things stood. She didn't know how serious it was. She only knew one thing. This woman was beautiful in a way that felt like a threat. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She wrote it down.
Only one for me, Jolene.
What came out was something no one in Nashville would have predicted. A song where the female narrator isn't angry, isn't demanding, is begging another woman to have mercy. And the genius of it, the thing that made radio programmers pause, was that Jolene herself never says a word. We never know if she's actually a villain. We only know what fear sounds like when it's translated into melody. The song reached number 1, but that's not why it matters. Jolene matters because it introduced something country music barely acknowledged: the complexity of female jealousy, told without shame, without performance, without resolution. The chorus doesn't end with a confrontation, it ends with a plea.
Jolene, Jolene.
And 50 years later, it is still one of the most re-recorded, reimagined, reinterpreted songs in any genre. Lil Nas X recorded a version. Miley Cyrus recorded a version. It has been covered in at least a dozen languages. None of those artists wrote Jolene from a place of artistic calculation. Dolly Parton wrote it from fear. And somehow that's why it never gets old.
Young compare with flaming locks of auburn hair, with ivory skin and eyes.
But fear wasn't the only thing that drove her greatest moments. Sometimes it was anger. And the next song on this list? That one came from somewhere much colder than fear.
I'm begging of you, please don't take my hand.
Number 7. I Will Always Love You, 1973, 1974. You know this song. You probably know it as Whitney Houston's song, and that is one of the most ironic misunderstandings in the history of American music.
Thank you. I would only.
Here is what actually happened. In 1973, Dolly Parton made a decision that could have ended everything. She told Porter Wagoner, the man who had discovered her, featured her on his television show, made her a household name across the South. She told him she was leaving. Porter Wagoner didn't take it well. He had built her career. In his mind, without him, there might not be a Dolly Parton that America knew. He felt betrayed. He threatened legal action. She went home and wrote him a goodbye.
Always love you.
I Will Always Love You is not a love song in the traditional sense. It is a breakup letter wrapped in a melody. It says, I know this hurts. I know you're angry. I am leaving anyway, and despite everything, I wish you well. It reached number 1 in 1974. Then, something remarkable happened.
But I know how things.
The legal situation between Dolly and Porter eventually settled. And when it did, the royalties from I Will Always Love You were part of the resolution. The song she wrote to say goodbye became the financial instrument that allowed her to finally, fully be free. But the story didn't end there.
Of the way, and I.
18 years later, Whitney Houston recorded a version for the Bodyguard soundtrack. It sold over 20 million copies. It became one of the best-selling singles in history. And here is the detail that changes everything. Elvis Presley wanted to record it first. His management asked Dolly Parton for the rights. The deal was standard for the era. They would take half of the publishing. She said no. Imagine saying no to Elvis Presley in 1974. She said no, they walked away. And she kept 100% of one of the most valuable song copyrights of the 20th century. Every time Whitney Houston's version plays, and it still plays somewhere on earth right now, Dolly Parton gets paid. She wrote it to say goodbye. It turned into the most lucrative song of her life.
But I know.
Now, if you're thinking that's the most audacious decision she ever made in a recording studio, you haven't heard the next story.
That's all I am.
Number 6. Here You Come Again, 1977.
Just when I'm about to get myself together.
By 1977, Dolly Parton had a problem that most artists would trade everything for. She was too successful. And country music didn't know what to do with her anymore. Her label, RCA, had a theory. If Dolly Parton crossed over into pop, if she could reach the mainstream audiences who were buying records by Olivia Newton-John and Linda Ronstadt, she could become something bigger than country music had ever produced.
Those pretty lies, and pretty soon I'm wondering how I came to.
The traditionalists inside Nashville called it a betrayal. The hardcore country audience, the people who had discovered her through Porter Wagoner, who had cried to Coat of Many Colors on AM radio, they heard Here You Come Again and felt something uncomfortable. This didn't sound like the Mountains anymore. The production was slick, the arrangement was pop. The sound was designed for top 40 radio, not honky-tonks, and it worked spectacularly.
All you gotta do is smile that smile, and there.
Here You Come Again hit number 1 on the country charts and cracked the top 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It won a Grammy. It sold over 1 million copies. But the real significance wasn't the sales. The significance was the door it opened, and the question it forced every female country artist after her to ask, how big am I allowed to get? Before Dolly Parton crossed over, there was an invisible ceiling above country music. You could be beloved within the genre. You could sell out county fairs and small arenas. But pop radio, Grammy nominations in the general field, television specials on the major networks, Here You Come Again cracked that ceiling. Shania Twain walked through it. Taylor Swift ran through it. They both owe something to what happened in 1977. The Nashville establishment complained for years. The numbers didn't care. If these songs are hitting different than you expected, subscribe, because the 5 stories still ahead are the ones that permanently rewired what country music could be. The next song didn't just cross a genre boundary, it forced a reckoning that Nashville had been avoiding for years. Number 5. 9 to 5, 1980.
Would deserve a bad promotion, want to move ahead, but the.
Let's be honest about something. 9 to 5 should not have been a country hit. It was written as a joke, literally. Dolly Parton was cast in the 1980 film 9 to 5, a comedy about 3 women who get revenge on their sexist boss. She wrote the title song during production, reportedly tapping her acrylic nails together to create the percussive intro because she didn't have an instrument nearby. A song written with fingernails. It went to number 1 in country and pop simultaneously. It was nominated for both an Academy Award and a Grammy. It became one of the defining anthems of the American labor movement and the feminist movement at the same time.
They got you where they want you. There's a better life.
But here is the question nobody asked at the time. Why didn't this make country radio uncomfortable? Because the song had a very specific message. It wasn't polite, it wasn't subtle. It described working conditions that were exploitative, bosses who were predatory, and women who were done tolerating it. In 1980, country radio was still largely controlled by men, and yet they played it over and over. The theory 40 years later seems obvious. Dolly Parton made it irresistible. The production was too joyful. The hook was too catchy. The fantasy of a Tuesday morning where everything finally changes was too universal. You couldn't hear 9 to 5 and not feel it in your body. She smuggled a revolution inside a pop song. It worked because you were already tapping your foot before you realized what you were agreeing to.
It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it.
The impact didn't stop in 1980. In 2016, 9 to 5 re-entered the cultural conversation. In 2020, it re-entered again. Every few years when the workplace conversation shifts, someone puts that song on. It is, remarkably, still current. And it was written because she needed a soundtrack for a movie about getting even.
Have a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come to life.
Imagine what she could do when she was actually trying to say something.
The boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is...
Number 4. Hard Candy Christmas, 1982.
Maybe I'll gain some weight.
Most people know this song from the holidays. What they don't know is that it almost didn't exist. And the reason it does exist says something essential about who Dolly Parton actually is. Hard Candy Christmas was written by Carol Hall for the musical The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, a Broadway show that was, to put it gently, not what country radio typically licensed. The story involved a Texas brothel being shut down by a morality crusade.
Getting through tomorrow. Still
It was satirical, provocative, and it made conservative audiences deeply uncomfortable. Dolly Parton, who starred in the 1982 film adaptation, was given the song for the closing scene. The character singing it is a woman who has just lost everything. Her home, her livelihood, her community, and what does she do? She decides to survive anyway.
hard candy Christmas, I'm barely getting through.
Maybe I'll dye my hair, maybe I'll move somewhere, maybe I'll get a car, maybe to the stars. The song is about choosing to continue when you have no real reason to, when the life you built has been dismantled, and what remains is just the stubbornness to put one foot forward. Country radio, which might have been expected to reject a song from a film about a brothel, embraced it. Because underneath the story of where it came from, the feeling was completely universal.
Maybe I'll settle down.
Everyone watching that film in 1982 had known a hard candy Christmas. A holiday where the gifts were thin and the smiles were thinner. A December where you got through it on willpower alone. The song reached the top 20. It recharts every single December. But the reason it belongs on this list isn't the chart performance. It belongs here because it quietly extended what country music was allowed to be about.
Don't let sorrow bring me way down. No, I'll be.
Not just romantic heartbreak, not just loss of love, but the particular kind of resilience that doesn't announce itself, the kind that just keeps moving because stopping isn't an option.
Bring me way down.
Number 3. Eagle When She Flies, 1991.
She's been there, God knows she's been there. She has.
There is a version of Dolly Parton's legacy that flattens her. It turns her into a symbol. The hair, the rhinestones, the laugh, the self-deprecating jokes about her own appearance. Eagle When She Flies was her answer to all of it. By 1991, Dolly Parton had been famous for 24 years. She had crossed over into pop. She had won Grammys and starred in films. She had become so iconic that the icon had started to obscure the artist.
She's broken.
She recorded an album called Eagle When She Flies that was, explicitly, a return, not just to country music, but to the kind of unflinching observation of women's lives that had defined her early work. The title track was a declaration. The lyrics described a woman who is simultaneously every contradictory thing she has ever been told she shouldn't be. Tender and tough, fragile and fierce, damaged and unbroken.
She's broken, but
The imagery was cinematic. A woman who can hold the weight of a family and still fly when no one is watching. It reached #1. More importantly, it sold over 2 million copies at a moment when country music was in the early stages of a commercial revolution.
you can toss her round and round.
Garth Brooks was about to explode. The genre was about to become something shinier and louder and more stadium-ready than anyone anticipated. Eagle When She Flies planted a flag in the ground. It said, "Before all of that, this is what we were talking about." A generation of female artists, not just in country but across American music, would later point to that album, that song, as a reminder that the most powerful thing a woman can do on a record is simply refuse to simplify herself.
She has seen and done it all.
But even that legacy pales next to what the next two songs accomplished. Because the final two entries on this list didn't just change country music, they changed the world.
But she's an eagle.
#2, Travelin Thru, 2006.
Like a poor wayfaring stranger that they speak about in song.
Here is something that should be impossible. In 2006, a country music legend recorded a song that was nominated for an Academy Award, for a film that most of country radio refused to even acknowledge existed. The film was Trans-America. The subject matter was the journey of a transgender woman, and Dolly Parton said yes. Let's be precise about what this moment meant.
I'm a puzzle, I must figure out where all my pieces fit.
In 2006, mainstream country music was in a period of extraordinary cultural conservatism. The Dixie Chicks had been destroyed 3 years earlier for a single offhand political comment. Radio programmers were policing the genre with unusual aggression. The message from Nashville's infrastructure was clear: stay in your lane or lose your airplay. Dolly Parton wrote and recorded an original song for a film that the country establishment wanted no part of. Travelin Thru is deceptively simple. It's a road song, ostensibly. A song about a person on a journey, about not knowing where you're going but going anyway.
Sometimes the road is rugged and it's hard to travel.
The lyrics are generous enough to hold almost any story of displacement and forward motion, but there was no ambiguity about why she wrote it. She wrote it because the film asked, and because she felt it was the right thing to do. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song, and it did something more subtle than win an award. It demonstrated that Dolly Parton's brand of inclusive humanity was not a PR strategy. It was just who she had always been.
But holding to each other, we don't have to walk alone.
The Smoky Mountains she came from were full of people the rest of America found easy to dismiss. She had spent her whole career making their lives visible. Travelin Thru was the same impulse, just pointed somewhere that required more courage to point. Nashville barely acknowledged it. History remembers.
As I was traveling through.
Number 1. Little Sparrow, 2001.
Little sparrow.
And here we arrive at the entry that changes everything you think you know about her. Not Jolene. Not I Will Always Love You. Not 9 to 5. The song that may be Dolly Parton's most complete artistic statement was released in 2001 on a bluegrass album that her label didn't know how to market. That country radio had no idea how to play, and that sold modestly compared to her commercial peaks. And yet, Little Sparrow is a traditional Appalachian murder ballad. The story is centuries old. A woman is betrayed by a false-hearted lover, her fate sealed, her only witnesses the birds of the forest. There is no redemption in it. There is no resolution. The ending is tragedy, clean and irreversible. Dolly Parton recorded it without ornament. No pop sheen, no radio-ready production. Just her voice, the voice she had carried out of Sevier County, Tennessee, decades before, against almost nothing else.
Some little sparrow.
The result was devastating. But the reason Little Sparrow tops this list isn't about the song itself. It's about what it represented at that moment in her career. In 2001, Dolly Parton was 65 years old. She had been famous for 34 years. She had won Grammys, starred in films, opened a theme park, launched a literacy foundation, and crossed over into pop music and back again. She could have made another comfortable record. Instead, she went home. Little Sparrow was a return to the oldest version of herself.
Little sparrow.
The girl who grew up hearing songs like this on porches in the mountains, songs that predated country music, songs that predated radio, songs that had survived because the emotions inside them were too essential to disappear. The album didn't top the charts. It didn't need to. It won 3 Grammy Awards, including Best Female Country Vocal Performance. But more than that, it reminded everyone paying attention that beneath every hit, every film, every television special, every rhinestone and platinum wig, there was a woman who had never actually left those mountains. She just brought them with her.
The broken